the first meeting of the town committee.
Oh, Ed is coming on right now.
It's coming out. There he is. Okay.
Everybody.
Hey, Ed, how
Hi,
are
Ed.
you?
Good, thanks.
Good evening, Jane.
Good evening.
We're just getting started. This is really just a kickoff meeting for the subcommittee that we've set up from town council. I'm just starting to speak. We don't have a chair just yet. We'll probably do that as a subsequent meeting as we organize. We don't have a chair of the subcommittee of this particular group yet. We've got a call to order is item 1 on the agenda. Second item is discussion of a timeline. And I think we don't necessarily want to set up a solid timeline tonight, but we do want to discuss that we have an accelerated timeline because we have certain time commitments that we have to meet if we're going to make a presentation, timely and get it to the planning board and then get it to town meeting for fall town meeting. I think the first thing that we're going to talk about is possibly, and maybe Sam can chime in on this, the first thing we want to start with is getting out a survey to the community relative to what people might want to see, if anything, in phase 2 of this go around relative to the 40A law. And Samantha, could you maybe comment on where we are on that?
Sure. I had started a draft based on kind of the comments that I had received from town council. I am happy to work on circulating it. I still have a couple edits I have left to make, but I'm happy to send that out and have it ready for comment at the next meeting.
If Ed got a copy of the updated timeline.
I don't think so. No, he did not. Because I have it by hand.
Yeah, would you think, Steve, that we might actually have that out to the public before whatever?
I mean, I am very comfortable with our communications team, with Sam and Jen McDonald and Erin, who has part of this, and myself getting that out. I get more earlier the better. I'd like to see it and have people more time to look at it. If we want to send out updates, we certainly can. The other thing we'll be doing is we'll be updating the website to kind of talk about the past and where we're going and things like that.
Right. We're already getting some comments on, what we don't have on the website yet, but I'm hoping the public will give us a little bit of leeway because we are just starting this whole process over again. And my hope is that we have as much public participation as possible within that limited time frame we have, and that we also have a couple of public forums or public meetings on the town council side, on this subcommittee side, perhaps at a larger venue, maybe one during the month of July and one possibly, Steve, maybe during the month of August. In addition to having public participation, I would like to see it. I'm only one person of the 3, but I'd like to see it at any one of our meetings, perhaps as we schedule going forward. If we have a map or a plan to talk about, perhaps we can have the public, have a timeline where we put it up and maybe we discuss it amongst ourselves and then open it up for public commentary. That's kind of the way I foresee this. I also personally, as only one member, foresee this as being a different type of plan ultimately. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I'd like us to consider, the 3 districts that we do have to consider. One being, I'll say the southern part of Greenwood within a circle coming from Melrose Highlands, one at Greenwood and one at Wakefield Station. So I'd also hope that we could look at the possibility of considering either or some larger residential areas as opposed to the prior plan to move it more into the residential neighborhoods, and possibly even take a look at maybe a percentage district outside of those circles, because we do have some leeway there. But this is all, just getting off the ground. I'd also like for us to just consider with the public the possibility of even mixed use, which, these were items that were not considered last time around. And I think I'd like to have a broader discussion of what, a plan might look like that would go to fall town meeting. And, I understand some folks have already indicated to me that they prefer to go Milton, and they prefer to, not do anything, which is to me a position I respect, but it's not, as one member of the subcommittee, where I see us ultimately going. I would like us to provide another option that's different from what we had last time at town meeting. That's all I'll say about that. Did you have any comments, Bob, introductory?
The feedback that you've received about going Milton was not from the subcommittee. That's people in the public.
Yeah, those are public individuals who have, who I guess some people thought that we wouldn't be having this at all. Because some people were under, the impression that when the three votes were taken at town meeting and they all failed, that 40A was now not in play. 40A is still in play, and we do still have to decide whether we're going to do the trade-off between waiving on grant monies or, trying to come up with a compliant plan, which, as I've said, I think my hope would be significantly different than what we saw last time. So these were public individuals, or just members of the public, counselor. They weren't, it wasn't any of the three of us. We're just getting started here. And we hope people will give us a little leeway, because we are just getting started. We're going to be on a tight time frame. And as I've said, we want to have as much public participation as we can.
Can I talk about the timeline?
Yeah.
The way that I look at timelines, whenever there's a zoning issue, which this is, you kind of have to move backwards from town meeting, because when it's going to be discussed and voted on, because there's certain milestones that you have to hit. This is a little bit more specific, because we should get some input from the AG, from the Department of EOHLC. I'll say EOHLC as well. So that kind of puts some other items in there. But we know the town meeting will probably be November 16th. Now, that hasn't been set yet, but that is probably, as I look at the calendar, where it's what I will suggest to the town council anyway. I think that's Monday, 11/16. So then we also know that we should have planning board public hearings prior to putting any zoning article at town meeting. The planning board has to have a hearing and should give an opinion. And there's things that if they don't give an opinion, that makes a difference. But that's standard in every in every zoning bylaw. There also is a warrant that this article needs to be on the town meeting warrant. That town meeting warrant is approved for publication by the town council. So there's a certain date that has to be done by and posted in the newspaper to comply with state laws. And that's for everything. So I'm looking at that we probably have, because of that, we are compressed, and we need to have this bylaw and map completed, by sometime in the, by beginning of August, beginning of October.
Yeah.
I almost killed myself, beginning of October. So, the planning board can have their public hearings, can have time for their notifications and what have you. Technically, the attorney, to throw a monkey wrench in that, the attorney general would like to see a draft of this, and they'd like it 90 days ahead of town meeting. Now, I think that we should strive to give them, even if something's incomplete, to get some feedback from them on. We kind of know what they're looking at from the first time, so I'm not all that all that worried, but there will be some changes. I'm assuming there'll be some changes between what was presented before. So we do have a compressed timeline. And in that, I know that we want to have some public forums, public meetings on it, not to be confused with the public hearing, which is, will have to be done by the planning board. And those will probably occur in October timeframes, October, mid to late October, perhaps even as late as early November. So going backwards on this, I see probably a first big public meeting, and Sam, jump in if I'm wrong, towards the end of this month. And we can have that as an in-person / hybrid meeting. I'll find a place for that, maybe the public safety building, because we've also heard that people like to come down and like to be in the room. It makes it a little bit easier. Sam, does that work with you? Kind of the end of July?
Yes, the earlier end of July, not the very last day.
Yeah.
But I would like
Yes.
to make sure that, yeah, we are giving ample time. So
Yeah, week of
sometime in
July,
that last week.
July 29th, which is, I think, yeah, that's a Monday. So somewhere in that week would be a good time. I will say, full disclosure, we have to keep away from the August 20th to August 24th because my child is getting married, and I'll be in big trouble if I'm not completely in there. So Ed will be representing my wife, and I'll be gone. I talked a lot. Ed has his hands up, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vice Chair.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention a couple things. First, I agree in terms of our structure. I think candidly that everything should be on the table. And I think that we're all in agreement on that. The only caveat to that from my perspective is I think our floor is going the way of Milton and not compliance. And I think our ceiling is minimal compliance. I do not think that there's a general consensus in favor of doing anything beyond that. Just based upon what we heard at Springtown meeting. So from my perspective, I think that's where we're at. I think Mike and I think all of us probably understand that to be the reality, that perspective. And the other piece is, I know, Steve, you had mentioned Aaron Kokinda with this. I really think it's important, especially that we have Sam onboarded, that we really transition Aaron out of this, because there is so much economic development that I think would be more deserving of her focus at this point. And now that Sam is up to speed, and I understand that Erin has been able to, impart a lot of her own knowledge of this process onto Sam, I really would like to see Erin really reestablished in the role that she was hired for and where the need is greatest. And I think that, that relates to the economic development piece. So I don't think it makes sense to continue to have Erin and Sam both working on this, because I think Erin does that at the sacrifice of her economic development responsibilities. And I'm afraid she'd be just spread too thin. So
noted, she would just be to bounce something off very quick on. That's it.
Yeah,
she won't be in the weeds on this.
I don't think, because Erin's focus isn't housing. She was never frankly hired for that purpose. She kind of stepped in when we needed it, but now we're fortunate to have Sam, who's really able to take the reins on that. So I'd like to be able to see Erin, go back to her core functions at this point.
Will do.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree entirely relative to the minimum. I think we're all on the same page with that. I want the minimum to be as close to the minimum too as we can do. I know that sometimes people say, well, you might want to have a 10% buffer. I don't want to get too into the weeds, but I would like our minimum to be as close to that true minimum as possible. If we keep everything on the table and we wind up doing less acreage because we're doing different types of buildings, if the town, if the populace and the subcommittee decide to go that route, I don't care whether it's 142 or 112 acres. I want the acreage to be as little as possible as well. I don't see why we have to take up even 112 acres if we're going to look at the plan a little bit differently. And we'll see. There are various rules that apply to these things. If you have mixed use, you have certain rules. If you have mixed use as a matter of right, you have certain rules. So we'll have to plow through all that. But I'm hopeful that, we can bring the acreage down as well and still have a compliant plan. We'll have the usual concerns. The planning board has written us a letter saying that they heard a lot about traffic. Well, a lot of us were there and we heard about traffic too, and we heard it from our constituents. We'll do the best we can relative to seeing whether we can deal with the traffic issue as best as we can as well. Given that any plan is going to have a certain amount of possible, not definite, but possible and potential units to make, excuse me, to make that minimum. So I agree 100% on the minimum, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I concur with the minimum.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we're all on the same page there.
I think that was loud and clear at town meeting.
Loud and clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just have a few procedural questions. So Steve, you can help me with the first one here. The warrant end date is 1 month before town meeting.
Give or take, yeah, you're normally around then, October.
Wait, mid-October, let's say. So
Yeah.
does the planning board have to have both of their public hearings and their recommendation prior to that
No.
date, or can they
No,
do
they
that
could,
after?
they could have that recommendation at town meeting. They could meet that afternoon if they needed to.
Okay, and then Sam, thanks for the updated timeline. A couple of questions I had for you. Can you just briefly explain the community scale contract and the community scale initial meeting that's up at the top part of your timeline, what that entails?
Sure. Hold on, I'm trying to take minutes as well. So Community Scale is the organization consultant that we worked with through the second half of MBTA communities last time around. They helped with public hearings, they helped with some of the presentations, and a number of other things behind the scenes. And so this time, due to the consolidated timeline, we're trying to utilize staff, myself, as much as possible. But getting final maps and getting the GIS layers and some of those complicated in the weeds components are very hard for me to do while I'm also going to be writing the zoning code all over again for this overlay. So the conversation that we had both in-house and with MHP, which was then extended over to Community Scale, was can they help with getting some maps done? And does the state still have any funding left to be able to help us with that process? So the last I heard, they do. We're still waiting to hear back final information, but that is the goal so that we can meet the accelerated timeline and be able to utilize as much in-house skills as possible, but also being realistic in that it is a very tight timeline, and trying to be able to do all of that by myself while we also have the housing production plan and a number of other things going on is a lot. So we want to try to utilize help when possible and have them help with getting some of those final maps done. So the sooner we can get a survey together, then the sooner we can get some information back and y'all can really start to get into the weeds of what a district would look like, what different areas would look like, and hit those numbers and figure out what those numbers would look like a lot more.
All right, thanks for clarifying that.
Do we have a time frame, Sam, for the bringing the community scale folks in so that we can get some assistance on maps?
Yeah, as far as I know, it was submitted to the state and MHP, the ones who deal with all of that. However, I am waiting to hear back. I emailed it again today to see if there was anything else that we needed to follow up on. I will obviously keep you posted as meetings go. I anticipate to hear something back by the end of the month. But as we have to focus, you mentioned you really want us to focus on having public meetings, or at least one public meeting before that, as well as looking at doing a survey. Those are things I can focus on while I'm waiting to hear back from them.
And I'll reach out to the secretary whose office reached out to us after town meeting, said, is there anything we can do? You can do this.
This
Help us get this done.
Secretary Augustus.
Augustus, yeah.
You reached out to us.
Yeah.
Good,
His office did, yeah.
good, okay. Yeah, because moving that along and getting
Right.
us some plans, when we have these public meetings, I want the public to be able to see something.
Right, no, I agree, I agree. And for the people at home or may look at this later, we're gonna say, what if we had this sort of zoning in this area? What would that mean for our numbers and everything? And they'll pop it into the map and show the streets. And so boop, 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 it'll come through the other end of the algorithm and say, that would create 697 units, which is one over the minimum. So that would be perfect. So they're a big help in doing it. And then we can tweak from there. We get it. We can play with it. But that initial set is good for them. And the state relies on them too. So that helps us out in the future.
You had more questions?
That's good.
Bob?
for now.
No, that was it. Did you have anything further at the moment, Ed? Okay, I don't have public participation on the agenda, but I can't see why we wouldn't address a couple of comments if anybody would like to talk about. I see that Bronwyn Delavope has raised her hand. Can we have Bronwyn
Yep, she can.
come on live?
Yes, she
Good
can.
evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for the intro information. Councilor McLean, you had mentioned that 40A is still in play even after the town meeting votes. Why is that?
Well, I think it is because, I opposed all three votes at town meeting. But that didn't mean that I didn't think that we might have a plan that I could support. I think that a lot of people, and I won't name their names, but you and I were both involved in a lot of the public meetings. I think a lot of the folks would have voted for a different plan, or, a majority might have been had for what I would say would be a better plan. I think as a town councilor, I can't ignore that 40A is still there. I can't ignore that, there is a trade-off if we go the Milton route. I'm less concerned about being sued per se than I am somewhat concerned about the loss of potential grant monies. I understand there are counter arguments to that and I respect them. But I think as a town councilor, my opinion of my job would be to try to bring a different plan, what I would consider to be a more palatable, more likely to be supported by a majority plan to town meeting and give town meeting the choice. And I don't think we had good choices last time. Obviously, I didn't support any of them. So to give town meeting a choice between that trade-off of being non-compliant and losing, some millions of dollars in grant money. I'm now also, as Delavope, I'm also hearing that we may also lose money through gas and light, which I was kind of surprised by. So now I'm now also pursuing that, trying to get the factual basis for that. Do they also participate in some of these many programs that the Commonwealth is penalizing communities on? And if they do, that I think is also fair information to bring forward to the public. I'm trying to get the commissioners of gas and light to give me some solid figures on that. So that we can go to town meeting and say, here's what we're likely to lose. Here's the plan the subcommittee has come up with through public participation and the subcommittee's own vote to present, and the town can do the same thing it did last time, can say, we'll go with it or turn it down.
Thank you for that. Who specifically spearheaded this initiative to keep 40A on the table?
I don't think 40A was ever off the table, but I can tell you that my thought process was that this time around it would be handled by a subcommittee of the town council, which is why I always try to give, as chair for this year, I try to give the town council notice, at one meeting that there was going to be a vote expected at the next. So 2 meetings ago, I told the town council that I was going to propose that we create a subcommittee of 3 members. At our last meeting, I proposed that. The town council approved it. I think that one was unanimous.
Yeah, I believe it was. Yeah.
And then I appointed the 3 members that you see here today.
All right, thank you. I can't speak for everyone who was at town meeting to vote, but I will speak for myself, and my opinion is that after the town meeting votes on 48, I think much of the town did feel that this was off the table. So that's why I was just wondering where this new initiative came from. Now, you did call earlier in this session that this is a zoning issue, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so then is there some exemption in the 40A law that exempts it from the 2-year moratorium to bring a bylaw back for reconsideration to town meeting?
This would be different. This would not be the same bylaw. So my opinion, it wouldn't even fall under that unless we brought it back the exact same of one of the two or three.
So you consider it substantially different? We're still voting on the 40A though.
You're still voting on 40A, yes. I consider it that what comes back would be different under the statute.
To
In fact,
clarify, you're not voting on 40A, the concept.
You're
You're
voting on a
voting on a
zoning-
very specific
the-
map and bylaw that's been
Yeah.
brought forward. So you're voting on the MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District and accompanying bylaw, just to
Okay, thank you.
clarify.
If someone, through you, Counselor McLean, why is this now a subcommittee and no longer with the planning board?
This was a determination that I made that because of what happened at the last town meeting, that it would be better handled by the town council. And that's the way I decided to do it.
Can you elucidate one or two reasons why you felt that it's better handled by town council than the planning board?
Well, for one, the proposals that were made, the manner in which they were made, the public participation in the the interaction with the public. You were there, I was there. Basically, I think it was an abject failure. I don't know what more I can tell you. I think that's pretty direct and to the point.
It certainly is. Thank you for having public input. I would be surprised and very disappointed if you hadn't. And I ask that you continue at each and every session and meeting that you have, that you do allow the public to speak and ask questions, particularly because there seems to be quite a bit of new information coming out. For instance, the issue around gas and light. I'm not sure I'd heard any of that information before, so I would consider that, at least for me, to be new information that the public would need to know about.
I considered it new information at my most recent meeting when it was mentioned to me as $1.5 million for the first time, and I've been involved in 48 for 2 years, and I had never heard such a thing. And I immediately asked the town administrator whether he knew where the 1.5 million came from, and he said he had no idea either. Subsequent investigation and, my own interaction with one of the commissioners was to say, please give us the information that you have, and make sure that we research it. I want to look back 5 years, and I want to see what we've gotten in 5. I want to see what we may lose, although again, given that is subject to whether we're actually going to get that money or not, whether we actually do. But there's a lot of work that's in play. This to me, Ms. Del Volpe, was also a shock. I've been doing this for a couple of years, been paying very close attention, and I'd never heard anything about gas and light being affected. So that's why I'm pursuing
And
it.
I think we can have an update on that at the next meeting.
Yeah, and I think we can have an update on that at the next meeting. I believe if you follow the gas and light agenda, that they've indicated that they were probably going to have it on their agenda, and I'll probably walk over to that meeting if I can possibly be there.
Thank you.
I think we have,
If I could just add something, Mr. Chairman, I think that when we're talking about this survey, part of the benefit of the survey, I think, is being able to have a number of these questions. I should say a lot of this information already provided to us, so that a number of the questions can really be tailored towards that. Because to your point, I think context matters, and if in fact we find that gas and light could be significantly financially impacted, that might have sway over someone's position relative to 40A. So I think, Sam, in looking at this, just thinking about ways in which we can make sure we integrate into the, surveys are all about the questions, I suppose, right? But being able to integrate in some of the impacts so people understand positive and negative relative to adoption of any sort of proposal or not. I think it would help to better inform those taking the survey too, because as the chairman points out, there's a lot of information here that we still, I feel like, are learning. And I agree, I hadn't heard about anything relative to gas and light until very recently when it was raised at the town council meeting. The only other piece I'd mention is I think ultimately if we end up determining that it's appropriate to advance forward a plan that is a minimum compliance plan, I think that, and I'm not saying that's an if, I don't know that's certainly not a fait accompli, but if we end up determining that and advancing that forward and it gets voted down, I think then that I think we will have achieve with such a plan, presumably, the best minimum compliance plan based upon the input of the citizenry. And so if our residents end up, voting that kind of a plan down, then I think they're in essence voting for, the Milton approach. And at that point, I think, we have to probably just follow the direction of the public on that. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, to your point, Mr. Chairman, and I totally agree with what you're saying in terms of approach. If we end up with a minimum compliance that we're confident is the best that reflects the community's input, and that fails at town meeting, then I think town meeting has spoken in a final way. That's, my perspective on it.
I agree.
Don Valerio has his hand up from the public.
Hi, everybody. Don Valerio, Frank Street, Wakefield. Thank you, everybody, for all you do for Wakefield, and thank you for letting us participate here tonight. I think we all have one thing in common. We all love Wakefield, and I did, talk to people on my daily going about my business. I ask them what's the most important thing to them in Wakefield, and it's generally comes down to overbuilding or building, or keeping building curtailed. So I think that's what most people care about the most. So that's why a lot of us are getting involved, and that's what we care about more than anything, and traffic, among other things. So I can carve out a little time in my schedule if there's anything anybody from the public can do to help with this. So keep that. I don't know who would want to get back to me on that. I'm busy like everybody else, but I'd be happy to carve out some time if I can do anything. And I have some questions that probably too long to go into here. Who would I email them to? Kind of more. Oh, okay. Okay, Sam, how are you? Just one quick one though. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, any questions you can always direct to me via email. And if I can't answer them, or if they're directed towards the board, obviously they can be, I would let you know, and then the board can take them up at the next meeting.
Okay.
Or subcommittee, I should say.
I've been wondering something, and that is who talks to the state, and who at the state? Is it the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities? Is it one of our elected officials, and who in Wakefield speaks to them? How often do they speak to them, and how does that dialogue go about each day or each week with pertaining to 40A? Who's that question going to? Is that going to Sam?
Want me to jump in, Sam? Well, it's the EOHLC, and the Executive Office of
Housing
and Livable Communities. I want to say DHCD because I'm old, but it's the division in that area. The state reps really have very little to do with this. They already voted for this at the end of the budget without any of our input. Oh, sorry to say that out loud.
No, Sam, is it you? Do you deal with the?
Yeah.
Yes, I am the one that's been in contact with specific individuals at EOHLC, as well as individuals who are helping this process with CHAPA and with MHP. So if you have direct questions regarding to something specific with the legislation or how that gets taken out, I'm happy to answer them. And like I said, other things I'm also happy to pass along if you don't ask all of your questions or don't get them all answered today.
Okay, sure. And I'll be getting my list together for you. I think I can find your email address easy enough.
Yeah.
Agent office, right?
Thank
And
you.
I think, Mr. Valerio, that Steve had also indicated that he was going to be discussing, trying to move along, us getting some assistance with these plans with the head down there, Mr. Augustus.
Yeah, we've met Ed Augustus. Yeah, we've met
Yeah.
Augustus personally. So
Yeah. So it's, Steve at one level, but Samantha more on a day-to-day level, I guess.
Samantha's going to do all the work. I'm
Right.
going to call the head guy and say nudge people.
Right.
Thank you.
John, are you all set?
Yes, thank you
Yeah,
very
okay.
much.
Great. If you'd put your hand down, that's the last hand I have
Oh,
up is Dawn's.
put your hand down, huh? Let's see.
No, it's but I don't have any others, so
Lower hand.
that's all we
Lower
got,
hand.
Mike. There we go.
All righty. In terms of the schedule moving forward, Steve, do you think we would set another meeting date tonight or leave that until we see how we're moving along with some of these items that we've discussed tonight?
I'm very happy to set a meeting of this subcommittee up tonight, if you would like. While we got everybody here, sometimes it's hard to set up a meeting date at this time of year.
Do you have a calendar in front of you, Counselor Dombrowski?
I do.
How about you?
I have mine here.
When were we thinking?
Well, if the first tentative public hearing date is the week of the 29th of July, then we should be meeting either next week or the week of the 22nd, right, Sam?
Yes, I would love if we could meet next week to review the survey and have commentary on that so that I can hopefully get that started and get out the following week or week and a half or so as needed. I think at the beginning stages, it would be great. I know it's a lot to ask to meet weekly, but at least for the rest of this month, that would be ideal. If you have openings in your calendar. I know that holidays and whatnot are a little rough.
I'm pretty good next week, Steve, except for our meeting Monday night.
Okay, does the 18th work? Ed, does that work for you? Thursday, the 18th, same time? You're muted, Ed, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm out next week, so nothing's going to really be ideal for me. So I'll do what I can to make it.
Yeah, I have dental surgery on the 17th, so I'd rather do the 18th
18th is good.
Okay, yeah.
Sure.
at 6 o'clock.
At 6 p.m., same general forum, hybrid forum.
Yeah, hybrid, yeah.
Yep.
And that's not the public forum, so that'll be here and on Zoom. Public forum will be in a larger location where there's plenty of seats. for people.
Right, like the police
Like the
building,
public safety.
public safety building possibly. And we'll get to those, but so we're gonna go one step at a time, folks. I really appreciate everybody, including the public, showing up at this meeting. I know it came up quickly, but we're on a tight time frame and we really wanted to get started. Important thing is to get started, get to second base if you don't put your foot on first. Item 4 on the agenda is items not anticipated. I'm hoping we don't have anything not anticipated. No, nothing to be sprung upon us. Alrighty. That being said, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Quick thing, hold on before you get the motion in there. If you, any of the subcommittee members could send me any questions that you feel are really important to include in the survey, I will double check that my survey draft either addresses those or add them to the list in some capacity. If you could get that to me, preferably by end of day on Monday, that would be great.
Right, I think I already did send something.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, you're good.
Move to adjourn.
do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Thank you.
The meeting is adjourned at 6:38, the first meeting of the 48 subcommittee of the town council. Thank you all for attending.
Have a nice night, everybody.
Have a good
you.
night.
Okay.
Thank you.